The report said David's body was 70 years old. It sounded absurd. He was 38, training for a marathon, in better shape by his own account than most people he knew. And yet, that number refused to go away. Here's how he got there. David runs 3 or 4 times a week. Genuinely, he's proud of that part. But most of his day looks different. 10 hours in a chair, back-to-back meetings, the kind of low-grade stress that stopped feeling unusual months ago. Most nights he gets around 6 hours of sleep, and he's mostly made peace with that. If your day looks anything like David's, you might already recognize a few of those habits. By ordinary standards, he was fine. Not exceptional, not falling apart, just normal. In the way a lot of adults are normal. A few weeks before that marathon, almost as an afterthought, he took a biological age test. Not because he was worried, more out of curiosity. The kind of thing people do the way they'd check a resting heart rate on a smartwatch. The result came back a few days later. His estimated biological age was 70. David's first reaction wasn't fear, it was disbelief, the kind of feeling where you assume a lab made a mistake or a machine misread something. But here's what makes this worth taking seriously. Biological age isn't a fringe idea anymore. It's become one of the more active areas of aging research, backed by labs that have spent over a decade trying to answer a fairly simple question. If 2 people are born on the same day, why do their bodies so often end up in completely different places? You may have noticed this yourself. 2 people you know, same age on paper, and yet one seems to move through the world a decade younger than the other. That's not a coincidence. That's biological age. And until recently, there was no real way to put a number on it. Your birth certificate gives you one number. It's fixed. It never changes. But underneath that number, your body is running its own clock, shaped by inflammation, cell function, cardiovascular health, dozens of other processes all moving at their own pace, which means the first question in David's case isn't why is his body aging faster? It's what did that test actually measure in the first place? The test that gave David that number measured something called telomere length, protective caps at the ends of his chromosomes. They shorten a little every time a cell divides. It's a real biological process. It's also one of the most heavily marketed tests in the entire longevity industry. The kind of kit you order online, spit into a tube, and mail off for a number that claims to reveal your true age. But here's the question that actually matters. Can you trust it? What surprised researchers when they went back and scrutinized these tests is just how unreliable the numbers turned out to be. Telomere length varies enormously between people of the same age. It can even shift within the same person from one test to the next. Some of the most common testing methods have shown enough variability that the same person tested twice could get 2 different answers on 2 different days. Oncologists who study this closely have pointed out something else. A wide range of telomere lengths is completely normal. Cells don't stop working just because that length has shortened somewhat. So the number that sent David into a quiet panic, the one that made him picture himself as biologically an old man, was measuring something real, using a tool far less reliable than its marketing suggests, which means the case isn't closed. It's just getting started. David's doctor ordered a second kind of test. This one looked at something different, chemical markers sitting on top of his DNA, shifting in fairly predictable patterns as people age, almost like a layer of dust settling onto a surface over time. Researchers call the tools built around this idea epigenetic clocks. And out of everything currently used to estimate biological age, this is the one with the strongest scientific track record. It's still not perfect. Even the researchers who build these clocks don't fully agree with each other. Different models tested on the same person can produce somewhat different estimates. What did David make of that? Mostly relief, followed by more questions. If even the experts disagreed on the exact number, maybe 70 wasn't the full story either. But when his epigenetic results came back, they weren't vague. They pointed toward 2 specific things: elevated markers of chronic inflammation and signs of strain on his cardiovascular and metabolic systems. Nothing about that showed up on a standard checkup. His blood pressure was normal. His cholesterol was unremarkable, which meant the real question wasn't about a scary number anymore. It was about what exactly was quietly straining his body, while every ordinary test told him he was fine. Here's where David's story takes its sharpest turn. He was, by his own account, in the best shape of his adult life, training for a marathon, logging real mileage every week. So when his cardiorespiratory fitness came back only average for his age group, it didn't make sense to him at all. Imagine climbing 4 flights of stairs, your heart speeds up, your lungs work harder, your muscles demand oxygen faster than your blood can deliver it. That feeling, that strain, that's exactly what a measurement called VO2 max is capturing. How efficiently your whole system, heart, lungs, blood vessels, and muscle can take in oxygen and put it to use under real demand. And out of everything researchers have studied in this space, VO2 max might be the single most consistently powerful predictor they've found. Across some of the largest population studies ever conducted, cohorts well into the hundreds of thousands, people with the lowest fitness levels have shown dramatically higher rates of death from any cause compared to those at the top. In some analyses, this single number has outperformed blood pressure, cholesterol, and even body weight as a predictor of long-term survival, which leads to a finding that surprises a lot of people. Fitness itself, not body weight, appears to be the stronger signal. People who are fit but carry more weight consistently show far better long-term outcomes than people who are thin but unfit. For David, this was the piece that reframed everything. Running mileage alone hadn't been building the kind of cardiovascular capacity his body actually needed. His training looked disciplined on the surface, but underneath it, his body wasn't adapting the way he assumed it was. If this number is such a powerful signal, why isn't it the very first thing anyone checks? The last measurement in David's case wasn't run in a lab at all. It was a grip strength test, the kind that takes about 5 seconds, using a simple handheld device to measure how hard you can squeeze. It sounds almost too basic to matter, but researchers have found that grip strength correlates surprisingly well with some of the same underlying processes we've been tracing this entire episode, including that same chronic low-grade inflammation showing up in the epigenetic results. There's a term for this kind of inflammation, inflammaging, a slow, quiet, inflammatory state that tends to build with age, which researchers increasingly believe connects muscle strength, metabolic health, and cellular aging into a single interconnected system. David's grip strength was lower than expected for his age, not dramatically, but consistently. Another thread in the same pattern, which means the most advanced insight into his aging process didn't come from the most expensive test in this story. It came from a handshake. So, what was actually making David's body age faster? Not one dramatic cause, not a single villain hiding in his DNA. It was a convergence, chronic, low-level inflammation, cardiovascular fitness that hadn't kept pace with his training, subtle metabolic strain, all showing up independently across 4 completely different kinds of measurement. None of it was visible on a standard physical. David wasn't sick in any conventional sense. He looked healthy. He felt healthy most days. If your day looks anything like David's, this pattern probably isn't unfamiliar. The training that never quite compounds, the sleep that's always a little short, the stress that stopped registering as stress a long time ago. And that's exactly why this field of research matters. Biological age testing, done well, isn't about frightening people with a scary number. It's about surfacing risk before it turns into a diagnosis, giving people a chance to notice a pattern years before their body would otherwise force them to. It's also worth being honest about where the science still has limits. These tools can't predict with any real precision how long David, or anyone, will live. What they can do is flag risk, in aggregate, across large populations. That's a meaningful difference, and one worth remembering every time a number like 70 gets attached to someone's name. If your day looks anything like David's, here's what these 4 measurements point toward. The same small set of levers, showing up again and again, cardiorespiratory fitness, built through sustained elevated heart rate, not just casual movement. Resistance training, which supports both muscle and the metabolic systems tied to inflammation. Consistent, quality sleep, and attention to the kind of chronic low-grade inflammation that so rarely announces itself with obvious symptoms. None of this is a secret protocol. It's not a supplement stack or a biohacking routine. It's closer to what most credible longevity researchers have been saying for years. It's just easier to actually act on once you understand the mechanism behind it, instead of following the advice blindly. That, more than any single number, is the real value of a story like David's. Months later, David ran that marathon. Same distance, same course, more or less. But this time, he understood something he couldn't have measured before. Not just how far his body could go, but what it had actually been asking for all along. Your birth certificate records the day you were born. Your body records every day that followed, every meal, every workout, every night you stayed awake, every hour spent sitting, every moment of stress. Your body remembers all of it. The remarkable part is that tomorrow it starts recording again. Understand more. Live better.